In this video, I'm going to show you another way to put hotspots on a graphic and at the same time be more user-friendly. One of the problems with hotspots, the way we've been doing it so far, is that the user sometimes can't see what part of a graphic is hot, that is, you could roll over and see an annotation, and what parts aren't. So we've done it a couple of ways. One way using just a graphic with the hotspots already on it. This time we're going to do another version that I think you're going to see is more friendly. So I've opened a typical starter page from Dreamweaver, and I've also saved it. And I just, in the content div that happens to be the main content div in this particular page, just erased what was there, and I'm going to insert the image that we want to annotate. And I'm using this image off the UVic campus, so I'll be putting in some alternate text right there, and there is our image that we're going to annotate. And I'm just going to save it. So you can see, well, it's hard to see right now, that there are a number of buildings, and I want to annotate 3 of them. I want to annotate the Clerihew building over here, the library, and Cornet. And of course, I could enter as many of these things I want, but we'll just do 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm putting 3 divs underneath my graphic. And you'll see why that's going to be important in a moment. And I'm going to insert a div right there. And I'm going to call this one Clerihew. And hit return. And there, we're quite used to seeing this, a div with some placeholder information. And I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to do something a little different that we haven't seen before. I'm going to insert a second div tag, and I'm going to call this library. And this time, I'm going to be explicit about where I'm placing it. So I want to place it after the tag for the Clerihew div. So I'm going to go to after tag, and we haven't seen this. A list of all the divs on my page appears in this drop-down menu, and I'm going to pick the Clerihew one. And when I click OK, I've got a new div. Now, the reason I'm doing that is that sometimes it's a little tricky to make sure you're placing the divs exactly where you want. And this removes any ambiguity or any difficulty. So I'm going to do one more. I'm going to go to Layout Objects. I'm going to insert a div tag. I'm going to call this one Cornet. And I'm going to put it after the library div. So I've got after tag, pick the div called library, and I'm going to say good. So we've got 3 divs in here. Now, obviously, we haven't really done very much with them, but we're about to do it now. We're going to do that through CSS. We're going to style these divs so that they act as the indicators of the markers, and at the same time, these are going to be the objects that the tooltips are going to be attached to. Now, if you remember back to how we've been doing this, to this point, we've been creating an image map and creating hotspots. This time, we're going to make the divs the anchors for our tooltips. But before we do that, we want to style them. So let's go to the CSS style panel, and you can see that these are the styles that come with this particular page. And I've selected the Clerihew div, and I'm going to just create a new rule for it. And I'm going to make it less specific because it'll be easier to read later on. And since this thing is the only thing on the page called Clerihew, I really don't need any more context. So I am going to, as I say, we've got the rule ready to go for the Clerihew div. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a border on there. And that border is going to be what is the visible part of it to the end user. So with everything selected, same for all that is, I'm going to make it a solid border. I'm going to give it medium thickness, and I'm going to make it red. Now, of course, you can choose whatever values you want. And one of the nice things about working in Dreamweaver is when we're looking at styles, we can click Apply, and that will apply the rule that we've just created to the object. Now, here's where we're doing something new. We're going to come down to a category we really haven't used before called positioning. And the first setting we're going to use is we're going to make it, this div, we're going to define it as a relative div. Now what relative means is that it is going to retain its position in the flow. If we looked at the code of our page, it would be quite where we would have put it in originally. But its actual physical position will be relative to its original position. So in short, what we're doing is creating a div in the normal flow off our page, that is, top to bottom, but we're displaying it in a different location. You'll see what that looks like just in a moment. So now that we've defined it, we've made its position relative, we're going to give it a width. And again, this is something you're going to play with to decide what works best for you. I'm using 100 pixels for the width and 50 pixels for the height. Now normally we never set the height of a div because usually what happens is that as much content as we put in, the height of the div expands to accommodate it. But in this particular instance, we want to make it precisely 100 pixels wide by 50 pixels high. And if we click apply, you can see what that looks like. As you can see, there's we still have more clearing up to do, and we'll get to that in a moment. Now, over up on the image itself at about here is the Clarihue building. And what we want to do is we want to move this div to that position. And we're going to do it by setting its placement. Now we're going to use a negative top margin. Not a margin, excuse me, a negative top placement, because we want it to be moved up the screen from its original position. So we're going to do this eyeballing it, and then as we get close to where we want it to be, we'll just fine tune it. So I'm going to start by making it minus 500 pixels. And what this again is saying is to the browser, we want you to take this div and move it up the y-axis, that is the up and down axis, 500 pixels. So we'll click apply, and you can see I overshot it, in fact, and so I should probably just bring this down to, let's say, 450 pixels, and roughly that's it. Now, you can spend more time as you work getting it precisely where you want, but in the name of moving along, I'm just simply going to get approximate. And I'm going to say, I also want this div to be 400 pixels to the right of where it normally would appear. And again, this is just my first shot at it. And I didn't quite get it. It probably should be about 425 pixels, if I can type. And I'll click apply. And now maybe I want to bring it down a little bit, so I'll make this 430 pixels. And that, for the moment, is all I'm going to worry about. As I say, when you do this, you can be much more precise. So now, just to reiterate, once I've had my div, I've used CSS styles to make it a relative div. I've given it an explicit width and height, and I've given it explicit placements. So many pixels up from its original position, and so many pixels from the left of its original position. So now I'm going to click OK,